Good evening and welcome to the Italian Impact Weekly podcast. I am your host, Steve Stefano Mancini, and I am back whether you like it or not, but you must like it because you're tuning in. And I want to thank my listeners from all over the world who continue to download this thing. That is an incredible blessing. I'm glad I'm reaching so many folks with a positive and uplifting message. Again, I focus on the Italian-American successes, but I do not limit myself to the Italian-American successes. However, what kind of show would it be if I wasn't focused on Italian, and it's called Italian Impact? So, if you have any guests you'd like to see on the show, please feel free to email me at questions@ItalianImpactWeekly.com. Again, that's questions@ItalianImpactWeekly.com. All right, I am going to not waste any time. I have a wonderful guest, another musician. Listen to some of his music. He was a recommendation from someone else. Again, this is how I'm finding some of my guests. So I appreciate the recommendations coming in. The interesting thing is this guest is right here from Pittsburgh. Till I was introduced to him, I didn't know that. So again, you never know what's in your backyard. So for this week's guest, I have a wonderful musician, Paul Cosentino. Paul, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
All right, Paul. So as always, I'd be remiss in my duties since you seem to have a last name that ends in a vowel, and I believe it is Italian, and a good name like Paul. Paul, where's your family originally from?
In Italy or in the States?
Aha, that's the trick question, Paul. You have to tell me both.
Okay, so my father was actually born in Calabria, and my mother's
For the
family
record,
was a
Paul,
couple
I knew I liked you. I knew I liked you.
Well, you may or may not like me more if I tell you that my mother's family, a few generations earlier, came from Sicily.
Close
so
enough.
they were neighbors.
That's right.
Are you Calabrese also?
My grandmother's side was all Calabrese, yeah.
Gotcha. They all came to New York as many did in those days anyway. My father got out along with his brothers and my grandmother in the nick of time in 1938.
Oh,
so it was,
interesting.
Yeah.
So
it was one of those deals where my grandfather came first.
Well, I was going to say, was he a young kid at that time, your father?
Yeah, he was 5. But
Okay.
he had some older brothers, and it was one of those stories where my grandfather came first and went back and forth numerous times because he could only afford one passage each time. And every time he went back to Italy, about every 4 years, he created another son. And by the time he somehow finagled to get them all out of there, there were 4 boys and his wife. So
now, did he ever figure out how the kids were being created? I'm just kidding.
Yeah, right. Well, my father's funny line about that was, Dad went back and forth about every 4 years. So me and all my brothers are exactly 4 years apart, and we better be.
That's right. That's absolutely the truth. So the interesting thing is then your father's older brothers probably remembered then what it was like, back in that era under Mussolini.
Yes. They told me a lot about it. They didn't remember the Mussolini part quite as much, but they definitely remembered the fact that in Calabria, it was very primitive in those days. Like there was, first of all, the economy was terrible. And people were basically mostly just like subsistence farmers and stuff like that. And there was also, my one uncle would always talk about how there was a lot of superstition and stuff that was still like really, really prevalent in those days. Things like people would say that they would see the ghost of a child who had died, in the woods and stories like that,
So how do you know they were being superstitious? Maybe they were being real.
Well, yeah.
I just had to throw that curveball at you.
They might have been. They might have been. I don't know. There's no way of knowing. But he claimed that a lot of that stuff was real.
Wow.
But it was definitely like a prevalent,
I'll tell you,
culture.
I'll say something. It's going to sound strange, but I believe we're more spiritual in nature, or should be. But I think that modern technology and the instruments of the world detach us from the spirituality that we're meant to be. And I would say that the people that were closer to the land may, I'm not, in other words, I have faith, I believe in God, I believe in all that stuff. So I don't necessarily dispute that, and maybe it was because of their mindset back then. They were more connected to the land. I know this is crazy, and people are listening. Steve, where are you going with this? I will tell you, though, that there's been interesting, work and studies done, and the simple fact is the more that we embed with what I'll call the modern world, the more detached we are from things like faith and our belief system, and it's interesting where society's going. So, just a random thought out there. But let's go back to your family, because you're not removed then you're not really far removed from Italy.
No, not at all. Even on the Sicilian side as well, like they were very traditional. So both sides, yeah, for sure. I mean, my dad's side, his parents never learned English, and even my older uncle, his older brothers definitely had his oldest brother especially had a very thick accent. So a quick story about him, my oldest uncle, he came over when he was 16, and that was 1938. By 1944, he was a medic in the American Army chasing Rommel through North Africa, through Sicily, and back into his hometown in Calabria.
Wow.
6 years later.
Did he visit his family members?
Oh yeah. And his funny line about the whole thing was, well, here's the crazy part about the fact that he was a medic. Okay, I don't have any way of 100% rating this, but clearly a kid who came over here at 16 ended up 6 years after he came here. So it would be 1944 roughly, was an American soldier. He was a medic in the Army. And he ended up chasing Rommel with the American Army through North Africa, through Sicily, and back into his hometown in Calabria, and as part of the Battle of Italy.
Wow.
But on the American side, of course, his funny line about all that was, the girls never paid me no attention when I was there before, but when I showed up in that American uniform, they did.
They sure had something to say about that. It's funny because, I did a film last year. It was about Italian prisoners of war in America. And it was kind of funny, but you mentioned that because it was kind of in a similar thing. The prisoners were brought here to America, and they had family members in America. And at the same time, you had, Italians who immigrated here in the 30s, maybe even earlier. And then, they joined the U.S. military. And then they're back overseas, essentially in some cases possibly fighting cousins. It's just it's so strange.
Yeah,
it's so terrible, amazing, to be honest with you. It's just a terrible.
Absolutely.
Even on the German side, there were German immigrants that came to America, early, and now they're in the U.S. military, and then they're fighting, who conceivably could be a second or third cousin. I mean, it was so unnecessary. And the irony was, again, in the film, and I love this line. I know people have listened to the podcast, have heard me say it multiple times. Sorry. But there was a line where one of the gentlemen says, look, we were fighting, against the Americans and the Brits, and then eventually we surrender, and now we're their allies, we're fighting against the Germans. Like, we didn't have an identity. The Italians had no identity during the war because, there was such mass immigration before the war to get out of Italy because of the poverty that you mentioned. And now a war breaks out, and they feel, hey, this is my civic duty. My new country is America. I've got to support America. And then they put that American uniform, and guess where they go? Right back, in some cases, to their homeland. So what a terrible, situation.
And by that point, I don't think Mussolini was exactly popular, as we know how things ended up for him. But the other crazy part about that story, and I don't have 100% corroboration on this, but it makes all the sense in the world. Like, my uncle came here when he was 16, and he became a medic in the Army. He clearly did not have any medical training whatsoever. My uncle's job was, he was a tailor.
He was a tailor?
That's right.
Okay.
So he could sew. You understand what I'm saying? Like,
right,
that's
right.
why they
so
made him
sew
a
up the wounds. No, it makes perfect sense.
Exactly.
No, it makes perfect sense. And they did it on the battlefield back then. There was no time because, shock and blood loss, those guys had to be treated. And the sooner they could get treated with some kind of, significant medical care, the more likely they were to live. That's why interesting side, again, the side note for folks that are listening, informative and entertaining. But that's why, as, by Vietnam, with the advent of helicopters, and even in Korea to some extent, we were able to get the wounded out of there, and their life expectancy went way up because they could be treated sooner. And so that way those medics on the field don't understand the importance of them. That's why in some cases the enemy was shooting at medics, because they knew if I kill the medic, they can't treat the wounded, and then I'm going to cause more disruption on the battlefield.
Yeah. So on my father's side, I did, and still the ones who remain, have very close relationships with all of my aunts and uncles and subsequent cousins as well. And then, but the grandparents, my grandfather died before I was born, and then my grandmother died when I was pretty young, and she never spoke any English, so that was kind of tough. But on the Sicilian side, my grandparents, they were more like the classic, like, Brooklyn Italian, like that neighborhood where they lived, it was like the honeymooners for real. You know what I mean? It was, I tell people, like, that wasn't really an exaggeration. That's how it really was, and that's where the music side came from, because my grandfather on my mother's side was a piano player professionally, and his brother was a drummer and also an artist, visual artist. So that's where a lot of that. I was going to
say, let's go down that path, because obviously you're a musician. Oh, by the way, real quick, I want to ask you, and I'm sure that the listeners want to know. I got to ask, are you a dual citizen?
No, I am not.
Paul, do you speak Italian at least, Paul?
Well,
or do you speak Sicilian?
Yeah, right. I know about the food. I can do that. I know about some of those phrases that your grandmother would yell at you, shall we say? And and I know and I know all the musical terms, of course.
Okay.
Because that's all in Italian as well.
Right.
We actually took a trip to Sicily last year for vacation, and my wife, she speaks 3 languages and picked up a lot of the Italian better than me, unfortunately, and gave me no end of grief about it. So,
as she should. I want her to make sure she listens to this and say, "Ma'am, I support you in your endeavor to shame your husband into picking up Italian." But Paul, let's go down the music path now, because a lot of good musicians, they've come. It was somebody in their family that inspired them, or they learned from. Obviously it sounds like from your mother's side that they were musicians, and obviously that has an impact on you. How old were you when you kind of picked up, music? Let's talk about that. Let's go down that path now. You've been playing for a long time. Inspirations. When did you know that this was going to be a kind of a calling? Let's go there.
So, I started playing instruments at the same time that most youngsters did. I started the piano when I was maybe like 6 or 7, and then started playing reed instruments. I started on clarinet and then eventually picked up saxophone as well when I was, I would say, 10. Usually it's about the 4th or 5th grade when you start on wind instruments, because you have to be big enough to be able to hold the thing up and to blow into it and make the sound, So you can't start any earlier than that. Piano and violin, you can start earlier. So it was the typical path in terms of when I started, but the music was always there. So there was never a time where I didn't know music. Like my grandfather being a piano player, when he would come over the house, he would say hello to everybody. We might have lunch if they came over at about that time, because I grew up in New Jersey. They were in Brooklyn, and they would every couple of weeks come, because we were near Princeton, and it was, how can I put this? It wasn't exactly an ethnic enclave of any sort, so we couldn't get all the stuff we wanted. So they would come once every couple of weeks with olive oil and salami and fresh cheese and bread and stuff like that from Brooklyn.
Oh, you mean they would bring the real food? I got it.
Exactly. So we would have lunch, and then he would go and sit at the piano and literally just play for 3 or 4 hours straight, just stream of consciousness. And he would play jazz songs. He would play Italian songs. He would play, he would play some classical. And so it was just music. My mother, growing up that way as well, those were the days when you had an AM radio on top of your fridge. And there was a station.
Wait a minute, we're not supposed to have an AM radio still on our fridge? Sorry.
Yeah, but the sad part is that back in those days, there were radio stations that played, the big bands, the jazz music, the singers, Sinatra and Ella Fitzgerald and all the greats. And that type of station was on in my house all day, every day, even when my grandfather wasn't there. So the music was always there, and I always loved it because it was part of when Grandpa came over and we'd have parties, and our family holidays. Like Christmas was, Feast of the Seven Fishes and sing along.
Right.
That's how my family was. So
mine was scream along.
Well, we had some of that too. But by the time, I started playing music, a couple of my cousins started playing, and I have brothers that started to play. It became sing along and jam session, because everyone was learning, the early, simple jazz tunes and the earlier jazz styles and stuff. And we all would just play together. That was like what part of our holiday, as much as the food was.
So bottom line is it's in your blood. I mean, it's in your blood from day
100%.
one, and you've been playing it from day one. Now, you've obviously played with different bands along the way, but currently you're with the Boilermakers. Let's talk about them, when they form, how they get started, and where. I mean, I've heard some of the music you have it on the website, and how do people find you? And I guess the biggest thing is, what drives you? Is it just raw passion?
Well, first of all, it's BoilermakerJazzBand.com, all one word besides the .com.
And I'll put that in the description for folks. And by the way, I always tell people when a guest gives me a website, I put it in the description. So folks, you can just go down there and click on that, please. And I always encourage people to go listen and follow.
So people probably don't know that Sicilians were part of jazz in the earliest days when it was first forming at the turn of the previous century in New Orleans, because that was actually the first place of mass migration of Sicilians was into the South, and specifically New Orleans. And they were living in the same neighborhoods as Black people and as Jewish people. And those were like the three basically the three biggest groups that started the art form that became later known as jazz. The African Americans, the freed slaves, were the first and foremost most important contributors, but Sicilians, and then especially later on, if you think of so many great composers, most of them were Jewish. So those were the three groups that really made the art form kind of what it became and what it is. So again, even like my cultural background, not just me, was there from the beginning. But I had little bands in high school that played, and we played. People paid us to play at their parties and stuff. And then when I went to college, I moved to Pittsburgh. I went to Carnegie Mellon and played in a bunch of the groups. And then someone wanted a more traditional, like kind of old time jazz band for a party, for a retirement for a professor. And one of the jazz teachers at the school knew that I knew that music. So he said, "Hey, can you put a group together to play for this party?" And I did. And everyone just absolutely loved it. And that became my first Boilermakers band. And it was a bunch of me and friends from CMU. And little by little, we started to get jobs around town, and it got more and more popular. And before I knew it, I was making a living playing with that band and traveling all over the world, literally. I mean, I've taken the band to Korea, Sweden, Germany, coast to coast, everywhere in Canada. Like, we've been all over the place.
The interesting thing, 2 points that you made that a lot of people do not understand, or it's just not being taught, was the mass migration of Southern Italians to the South to replace the slaves in the fields. That's why
there was a labor shortage.
Right. That's why they were migrating there, and that's why they were living together, and that's why a lot of people, it's kind of a joke, but it's not a joke. But Italians weren't considered white because of that. The darker skin, darker hair, dark eyes from the southern Italy, from Italy. So they go there to replace this.
And Sicily had been conquered so many times, and they had also been conquered by North African people.
Correct.
So
they're not blonde hair, blue eyes, but right.
No, they do have that. We do have some of that DNA in us.
Right. That's absolutely
Greeks,
right.
Turks, Normans, everything.
The Moors from North Africa, which probably more Arabic, I would say, than anything. But to your point, you had the Moors, you had everything around the Mediterranean has gone through Sicily, and then you have everything coming from the Spanish, the Vikings. Everybody's been the Greeks, the Romans, obviously were there forever, So I don't say this in a bad way. I just say this it is way. It's a mishmash of cultures. And
when we were researching a lot of that stuff, because that's a lot of what you see when you go there, is you'll see a Greek temple next to a Roman theater, next to a Norman church,
Right.
next to a Baroque, church. And it's fascinating. And that's everywhere in Sicily. But we did read that specifically Sicilian DNA is the most diverse in the world, even to now.
I wouldn't be surprised. And the irony is I've never made it to Sicily. I've been to Italy a million times. I've never been down to Sicily. But everything I see just looks so beautiful. And, it's a shame because, it's stereotyped. The mob, the mafia, the all come from Sicily, Sicilian, all that stuff. But there's so much more to Sicily. And I think a lot of people, got to understand the history. But they came here, 100 plus years ago to replace that labor. They were not treated well. They were lynched. People forget that one of the largest mass lynchings in the U.S. history was actually, they were, I'll quote, Italians. Because keep in mind, Italian didn't unify until I think it was 1860s. So when these people are coming over here, Italy wasn't Italy that long. So they were still seeing each other as I'm Calabrese or I'm a Sicilian, I'm this or that,
Right.
So,
and that lynching took place literally right in the city of New Orleans.
That's right.
I mean, right in the city. So it wasn't like it was in some far-flung,
small town in the middle of the sticks.
Area or
right.
Something. Right, exactly. No, it was in the city. And actually, I can tell you from having been there, and I heard this before I went, but even more so in earlier days, but I will tell you it's even true now, that Sicilians only consider themselves Italian because that's their government.
Correct.
They do not consider themselves to be Italians by heritage.
Right. That's right.
They're Sicilian. And that Sicilian flag with the Trinacria and all that, that is what you see on 90% of businesses and different places that they fly that flag. The only time you see the red, white, and green Italian flag is on government buildings.
That's right. That's absolutely right. Because a lot of them, they're. I'll say I'm always a little. I almost think they do it right in some ways. And I hate to say it like this. It's yes, our government, we're unified. Ultimately our government is, the central government. We're Italian in that regard, but culturally speaking, we're Sicilians or Calabrians or whatever. But I think one thing that a lot of those immigrants brought over that has not been entirely undone is they brought that loyalty to the region. You still hear people say that. At least the older Italians still say that. Yep. They don't necessarily say I'm Italian. They say I'm from Calabria. I'm from Abruzzo. They don't say I'm from Italy. Mm-hmm. The younger ones, you ask them, hey, where are your family from? Italy. Okay, where in Italy? That's like saying I'm from America. Okay, got it. But where? Because there is a difference. Right. Even America's in a similar predicament. If you're from Texas, it's very different than being from, to your point, say, a Louisiana or Mississippi. It's very different from being from Georgia, which is very different from being from the New England area, which is very different from, being out in Hawaii. So even America has that diversity. It's such a large country. Italy's in a very similar, boat. But I want to go back to the jazz and the origins because that's something that a lot of people don't respect. They don't respect the influence. It wasn't just, quote, blacks invented jazz. It was a culmination of different things that were brought in that refined it to jazz. And interestingly enough, jazz is one of those genres, and tell me if I'm wrong, that I'm not saying it hasn't changed much. It's changed, but it hasn't changed significantly. You could still recognize jazz, now, way it would have been played, 100 years ago. And it still seems to have a baseline of it's constantly listened to and liked regardless of age. Would you agree with that?
I would, and the interesting part about it is that it has also evolved tremendously throughout the years and changed, but there's still people playing the traditional styles, whether it's the early New Orleans style, whether it's the next genre, which would have been like the swing style, and then the bebop style, and then you get into these more ones were kind of blends with rock or blends with Latin styles. That's another whole offshoot. But the beautiful part about it is it's multicultural. It's definitely multi-generational. And one of the things that makes it, to me, the most interesting music is it's improvisational. It's based on song forms, but it's improvisation. And that means you might have, an 82-year-old African-American person playing with a 50-year-old Sicilian person playing with a 20-year-old Jewish person. And you have to, in the improvisational part, you have to get along. You're having a musical conversation, and you don't want to step on somebody's toes, but yet you want to have your creativity at the same time. And that's what makes it super challenging, but also makes it so beautiful, is that can actually happen. And I play in groups like that where there's multi-generations, multi-ethnic backgrounds, even today. And that's what, to me, makes it such interesting music. And the songs are all coming from those different backgrounds as well. And that could have only happened in the United States at the time that it did. And that's also why jazz is our artistic gift to the world.
Well, I'll tell you, it's funny you say that, because music was definitely one of the first things that started breaking down barriers, between cultures. And when I say culture, I don't just mean black and white. I mean cultures, because there is this, belief that, all white people are this, all black people are this. Well, it kind of depends where you're from, right? A Sicilian, now they might say, oh yeah, they're white. Okay, well, you ask a Sicilian, I think they say, no, I'm Sicilian. And if you ask, a Jewish person who immigrated from Eastern Europe, 140 years ago, and then they end up down in, New Orleans, and they have a passion for music, and all of a sudden they hear these sounds and they come up with their own style. It's going to be based on where they came from. So you have you have a mixing of more than just black, white, blah blah blah. It's the diversity of cultures, even when they quote the ethnic groups, that I think music in general has done a good job of, and I think it's why music is just it's constantly evolving, because people are constantly bringing something new from their experiences. I do think, though, personally,
absolutely.
Well, and I kind of want your thoughts, because I know you play jazz, but personally, I do think that music has become I would say mainstream music has become very stale. It's a very, cookie cutter. It's solely about revenue. I'll just say it like that. But you're playing in a jazz band. You're not expecting to write a $100 million, bestseller, platinum on the wall. It's a passion. And I'm not saying other musicians don't have that passion that are not in jazz.
I wish I would, but I don't think that's happening.
Right. Right. That's what makes the music more sincere. It comes from the heart.
I've made a living doing it, for many years. Since I'm going on 40 years doing it for, as my sole income. So for that, will be eternally grateful, but it's a lot of hard work. It's not like I can just sit back and collect royalties from a hit song. But to get to your point, I think there's two reasons why I think the music, for me, of popular culture, even since I can listen to pop songs from when I was young, like from the 70s and 80s, and think okay, that's a good song. Even though it's not jazz, it's a song, okay? People are playing instruments. There's chord progressions. There's lyrics, right? The issue now, we're going to go all the way back to the beginning of our conversation about technology, is that so much of what they're calling music is electronically generated, whether it's electronic beats, electronic sounds, even voices that are what they call auto-tune. They're changing the voice so that it hits perfect pitches, so you don't have that nuance of pitch anymore. And the songs just don't have the, I sound like an old man, but they just don't have the depth, And then the other issue besides all that is, and this also goes into why all that's happening, is because it's become incredibly corporatized. And that's the only way you can have basically a big hit record, is if, these gigantic corporations deem you worthy of it. And there's also very, very much fewer record labels, internet radio, okay, but it's spread so thin. Back in the day, there were hundreds of independent record labels. So you go to a record store and find something. There were all these, once again, like free AM radio stations where the DJs played the songs they wanted to play, not something that was generated by a computer from some giant corporation. You see what I'm saying? That's what's causing this homogenization of music now.
Well, that's funny you say that, and I'll tell you, because I'll tell you two things on that. One, against my better judgment, I have satellite radio. That's why. What's the problem with that? The problem with that is it is the same songs over and over and over again, to the point where I can't even listen to certain bands. And I'm talking, these were my favorite bands at one point. I'm like, man, I'm sick of hearing that song because they keep playing it over and over and over again. And two, you nailed it. It's not personal anymore. It's strictly corporate. And you know what? I'll add something else. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. If you ever look at the bands from the 70s, and I don't mean this like to be too, completely disrespectful, but a lot of those bands they weren't attractive physically. Like the big bands, you're like, right. Man, that dude looks like crap. But damn, they could play. And I think there's a point where everything switched over. And I would point to the 80s where I feel like it switched from, can you really play, to do you have the look? Don't worry, we'll give you the music, we'll do everything. You just have the look. And now I think that is completely what it's about. There is a lot of talent out there, but you're never going to know it. You're never going to know it unless someone in some headquarters says, we can make a lot of money off this person. And I'm not going to talk about a certain female artist who's obviously super popular, because I won't mention her name, but I don't think she's anything that good. So I'm going, What is the attraction? Yeah, she's got some hits. I get it. But there's nothing that screams like, oh my God, billionaire, gazillions of people. Yes, let's pay $20,000 a ticket. It's just not that good. And that's not because I'm saying that from a bias.
And going back to the days when jazz was popular music, and I'm talking like that was like basically like in the 20s, 30s up until World War II, there was about a 20-year period where you could say like jazz was pop music. What you looked like helped, because some people did look like movie stars and that didn't hurt them, but it was 95% like what your talent level was. I mean, Benny Goodman looked like a dentist. You know what I mean? He didn't look.
Yes, he did. That's right.
Movie star looking guy. You know what I mean? Ella Fitzgerald was very overweight. Nobody cared. Look at the talent. Look at how she could sing. Look at how he could play. Nobody, and plus they actually weren't being seen as often, because to see them, you had to go see them in person.
That's right.
They were being heard on the radio, and on the radio, you don't know what they look like and you don't care. You know what I mean? It's just what it is. Even Sinatra was a skinny, goofy-looking kid.
That's right.
When he first hit it,
Yeah, he did not. Yeah, there was nothing there. He was like skin and bones. Because it's funny you say that, because I remember seeing.
They used to say you could hide behind the microphone stand.
Oh yeah, but it's funny you say that, because I remember I've seen pictures of him when he's younger, and I remember thinking that myself. Like, man, what was the attraction? Well, I mean, again, he was a crooner. He, in some movies, blue eyes, blah blah blah. But yeah, I just think that I try to listen to I try to turn on like maybe a modern rock song or something, because again, with the satellite, you can see what's playing. Just like, man, it's just not interesting. I mean, I'm not saying that it's not good or bad. I'm just saying, to me, I just don't like it. There's just something I don't like about it, and I keep finding myself going back. And the problem with that is I don't want to keep listening to the same music over and over again. I want something new, and I can't find it.
Well, and that's the thing about we were getting back to the timeless nature of jazz. One of the things, again, getting back to the improvisational nature of it and the interpretive nature of it. In the 60s, when the singer-songwriter concept came out, it was more about like people wanted to hear the song kind of done, quote unquote, like the record. But before that, in the jazz idiom, you could have the same song that would be popular, and so a number of groups would record it, and it would still be the recognizable song. Oh, that's Blue Skies by Irving Berlin. But if Frank recorded it, or if Ella recorded it, or if Benny Goodman recorded it, they would all have a different interpretation. And that one song could be on the hit parade multiple times. Like it could be a top 10 hit for 3 different bands at the same time, because everyone is adding their own interpretation. And that's what makes it human. That's what makes it music, because you could debate like, oh, I like Frank's version better than Ella's, or I like Ella's version better than Benny's. You know what I mean?
Well, it's funny you say that, because I'll go back to my satellite radio when I'm on long road trips and I'm listening to, a station, and you'll hear a song like, a lot of times, like you said, in the 60s and 70s, especially, where you'll hear a song, and then you'll hear somebody else did it, and somebody did it in 70, and somebody did it in 71. And I said, man, it couldn't even been off the charts yet, and this person's doing the same song. But I remember consciously thinking that multiple times on multiple songs, how I said it was so close. There's no way that could have been off the charts for the first person that did it, and yet somebody comes along and does their version of it. So that was a lot more common, just because, like you said, people put their own spin on it. And it wasn't so much, I don't think it was so much like, like I don't have anything. I think it was, I like that song. I want to do that, and I think that probably drove a lot of people. But
well, and also in those days, the composers, with a few exceptions, like Duke Ellington was the biggest exception. He was a composer and a musician and band leader. But most of the composers were not band leaders. They were just composers. So you had guys like Gershwin and Irving Berlin and all these people. They could play the piano because that's how they wrote the songs. But they didn't lead a band. So they were just publishing these songs, and anyone could get the rights to record them. And that was how they made their money. So it was sort of a completely different concept in a way. It wasn't like bands writing their own music. Duke Ellington was one of the few who wrote music for his band to record, and he also was band leader.
Right. Well, like I said, and that's what, to me, I know this is going to come off rough, but to me that is kind of the bigger test of a musician is, can you write your own music? You don't have to write a top 40 song, but can you write your own music and it can be played? Because, I'll give you kind of one final thought. There's a lot of people that, and there's nothing wrong with this, they'll get really good at playing someone else's music. To me, that is a testament of your ability to play the instrument. But I think the other half that a lot of musicians don't, either they're unwilling or unable, is to write an original score. Again, you don't have to, but I think that's kind of the ultimate test. Because you mentioned Duke Ellington. That's what I think separated them. Was the fact that a lot of these people that were writing their own music, composing, and and to the point where it's so good that other people wanted to play. You say, "Whoa, that's a good musician." When someone else is, copying is a form of flattery, right? So
yeah, exactly.
So let's talk about kind of a final thoughts. Talk about the band. What's next?
Sure.
Where are you playing? And how can folks, I know you mentioned the website. It's going to be down in the description, but we're going to hear it from your mouth again. But let's talk about the band. What's next?
Okay. So we do travel quite a bit. I just came back from doing some jobs in Baltimore and D.C. We'll be going up to Buffalo for a festival in September. And we have a couple festivals right here in Pittsburgh coming up. But, yeah, the band plays a lot we do festivals and things, and we also play quite often for swing dancing events. They put on these big weekend events where everybody comes and dances, and they rent, like, dance halls. And if you showed up there and if it was in black and white, you'd think it was 1938. You know what I mean? It's like, just a big hall filled with people doing the Lindy Hop all night long. And to me, that's the super fun thing to do. But if you don't know how to dance, you can always come and listen to the music.
But that means you have to play all night.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I don't know what point you get tired.
Sometimes we play till 4:00 in the morning. I'm not joking. These dancers are crazy. Like they have a lot of these festivals will have 2 or 3 bands in an evening, right? And each band will play for about 3 hours, and the last band will play from 1 to 4 a.m.
Oof.
So it's a wild thing. But they keep you going because their energy, they need our music to do their art, which is the dance. So we have to keep them hopping, and they keep us hopping. So it's good. I have a couple things in Pittsburgh coming up that people should know about. Well, first of all, I play every Thursday at a place called Golden Age Beer Company in Homestead. It's like a microbrew kind of place, but they have really good wood-fired pizza, and it's no cover. I have a quartet there every Thursday night from 6 to 9. In the summer, we're outside in the beer garden. It's beautiful. But at that location, we are also doing, my band is kind of the host, but we have 6 bands from around the Pittsburgh area. On Labor Day weekend, the 28th to the 31st, we're having multiple bands per day, and we're having a real community jazz festival with all the best Pittsburgh bands, and that's called Golden Age Jazz Fest. You can look that up on Facebook, and it's going to be free. We're bringing back a real community music festival because there used to be tons of them years ago, and they've all disappeared. And again, getting back to corporate money, all the corporate money has disappeared for that kind of stuff. So we're doing it ourselves. and we hope you will come. That's Labor Day weekend at Golden Age Beer in Homestead, Golden Age Jazz Fest. And then in November in Pittsburgh, we have what's called Pit Stop Lindy Hop, which is our local swing dancing weekend. And again, there's going to be 5 or 6 bands dancing day and night, a bunch of different venues. So again, just look up Pit Stop Lindy Hop. I'm going to be involved with it. I'm going to be leading my Boilermaker group, which is a 6-piece band. And I will also have a 15-piece big band on the Saturday night for that, which is something not to be missed because I have all the great arrangements from Goodman, Shaw, Ellington, Basie, all the guys. And we're going to be playing all that repertoire. Yeah.
That's fantastic. You know, it's funny because I had no idea that all these things were going on.
Now you know.
That's right. No, Paul, I appreciate you very much. Appreciate your time. Great conversation. And I'm definitely going to come out and visit you. So, this is wonderful. And by the way, I want to mention something, though, that you talked about, the corporate sponsorship. I still think grassroots is the best way to go. You know why? Because you're not beholden to anyone. No one can tell you how to do it. You know what? I'll do it myself. And I'll do it the way I want to do it. And I'll own it. And we'll find if the community wants it, they'll support you. If they don't support you, they don't want it, move on. But I always say to the community, if you don't support it, don't complain when it's gone.
100%. And that was our idea for doing it was, I remember when there were these community festivals all over Pittsburgh. Every neighborhood had a music festival for free in the street. And I was talking to somebody about it, and he was a younger guy that didn't even have any memory of that stuff. And he said, well, why don't we just do our own? And I said, no, you're nuts. But guess what? We're making it happen.
That's fantastic. Paul, I want to thank you again for joining me. Folks, go down in the description. You got a link to the website, the Boilermakers Jazz Band. I'm going to try and get out there and catch a few shows. Actually, I didn't know you guys were playing you said every Thursday, correct?
Yes.
All right. Yeah, I'm going to definitely make one of those trips, especially once you said pizza. You had me at hello. Actually, you had me at pizza. But Paul, again, I want to thank you very much for taking time out of your schedule. I know you're busy. I just heard it from your own lips. So a lot going on. Paul, thank you again very much. And I can't wait to come see you guys. And folks, I hope you get out there and support. Again, you have an artist here in Pittsburgh playing live music, good music, and I want folks to get out there and no excuses. Turn the damn TV off and get out there and start enjoying life a little more. Enjoy it live. So, folks, we're going to be right back after these messages. Do not go away. I have a very special guest coming in after these messages. Paul, thank you very much, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks, buddy.
Ciao, Chrissy. Your Italian got so much better. Brava.
Grazie. It's because I learned the best way possible.
How so?
Well, I learned that with apps, grammar books, and even YouTube videos, I could only get so far. I had to immerse myself. I noticed I did best when I was in Italy visiting family. That's where my level really soared.
And wow, did it work?
Thanks. I became much more confident, fast. That's why I created Footsteps Through Time. It's an Italian language experience. You don't just take Italian classes, you immerse yourself in a real Italian village. With lots of fun activities and excursions, it's life-changing.
I see. So, no more boring grammar, impersonal apps, just real conversations, real culture, and delicious food, of course.
Exactly. I'm so excited about this. Learn Italian by actually becoming part of the local community for a week and living it. So if you've been dreaming of Italy and the language, check out Footsteps Through Time in Italy.com. Book now and join the experience.
Andiamo!
Thanks to Greater Pittsburgh Travel. For any of your travel needs, let Tom and the team at Greater Pittsburgh Travel know, and they'll take care of you. For more information, call 412-331-2244 or visit their website at www.greaterpittsburghtravel.com. Did your parents or grandparents ever talk about the Vietnam War? The Hardest Year, a love story and letters during the Vietnam War, is an accurate portrayal of what life was like during the 1960s, a time of the draft, equal rights, and the anti-war movement. Follow newlyweds through their letters as they navigate 1 year of the war an ocean apart. The Hardest Year by Carol and William Wagner is available now wherever books are sold. And we want to thank the Calabria Club of Pittsburgh. If you're interested in learning more, you can find their contact information on Facebook at Calabria Club of Pittsburgh. Again, thanks Domenica and the team at the Calabria Club of Pittsburgh for your support. And we want to thank La Scuola d'Italia Galileo Galilei, the only nonprofit school in Pittsburgh endorsed by the Italian Consulate. If you're interested in learning Italian or have your children being immersed in the Italian culture and language, be sure to give them a call at 412-404-7070. And that's La Scuola d'Italia Galileo Galilei. We'd also like to thank Chris Gonzalez from the Knights of Columbus. If you have any questions about joining the Knights of Columbus, reach out to Chris Gonzalez at 412-605-9074. Hello, Bucko fans. This is Steve Stefano Mancini, international award-winning filmmaker and host of the award-winning Italian Impact podcast. Join us in celebrating the Italian community on August 23rd as the Pirates take on the Colorado Rockies. This special offer includes an exclusive Pirates co-branded Italian hat and loaded value, good to use on concessions and merchandise on the day of the game. Also, a portion of each ticket will be donated to a local Italian charity. So come experience a unique blend of sports, culture, and community during Italian Heritage Night at PNC Park. Grazie, ci vediamo. All right, welcome back. And as I promised, I have a special guest. Let's see. Hey, before we tell them their name, remember that show back in the 60s? You'd say, guess who this person is? They'd say the voice. So, how are you, mystery guest?
I'm doing great, and it's always good to be back.
That's right, folks. That's Claudio Reilsono. Claudio, hey, I appreciate you coming in, man.
Thank you for having me. I miss being here, miss seeing you. And, it was a lot of fun, and I'm sure we're going to have more fun in the future.
We are. In fact, Claudio and I were talking that we're going to get Claudio back more often. That's for sure. But I tell you one thing. Next to me, and I still think I might be one of the busiest people in the world. If you're not number two, you're damn close to number two. But I definitely wanted to say one thing for the folks that missed it. I know actually there's some listeners here, especially the local folks that actually were at the Hall of Fame. But I want to give a shout out to the Italian American Sports Hall of Fame. And the Pittsburgh chapter had their annual banquet last week.
Last Tuesday.
Yeah. And I actually went to that, and I felt bad. I was out of the country last year. But I finally went to one, and dude, that was fantastic. I mean, you're obviously the chapter president, and you guys put together a fantastic event. I actually really enjoyed that event, and I told a lot of people about it. So I want to give you a shout out.
One of my old sayings is, if we all pull the same rope at the same time, the same direction for the same purpose, we'll get a special result. And there's a lot of people on the board that do that. And Mark Mackey, John Gaetano, Donna Sanft, a bunch of people. But the one guy, Rick DiCarlo, who was the MC, but the one guy who drives the bus without question is Tony Ferraro, who's also affiliated with the Chicago Italian Hall of Fame, which is the main branch.
Yeah, I heard the names. I didn't know. I knew some of them.
I introduced you to Tony.
Right.
Yeah. But it's a great.
I don't even remember what I had for breakfast
tell
today.
Me about it. But we've given away over $850,000 of scholarships in all these years, and every dollar helps these kids. But it's a great organization. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of work. And we start, it was last week, and we're going to start here pretty soon to prepare for next year.
I was going to say, that something like that was a big event. And I'll tell you why. There's a couple of things. One is you're getting your guest list together. And some of these people, they're busy. You got to get them on their schedule early. But at the same time, you're giving awards out. And it's like, well, who's going to get the awards? Sometimes you got to be nominated. You got to elect them. You got to vote. So there's a process to this. It isn't like people just show up and say, hey, congratulations, you're going to get the annual award. This is like months and months and months of planning for this. I want to talk about before we kind of jump ahead and see how you've been doing and some other stuff you got going on. I do want to talk about something you'd mentioned, the scholarships. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of groups out there that do stuff. This one, was it founded for that purpose, or was that just something that kind of picked up later on?
Dan Marino Sr. started this years ago in '86. Matter of fact, when I think it was Paul Long from Channel 4, they made a little bit of a blurb about it. I'll never forget my dad said, boy, and my mom, wouldn't it be nice if you had the type of career someday that you could be honored by them? Well, I did get Italian Coach of the Year, and I'm president now for 3 years. I'm not in yet, but that's another story.
That's right. I still needed to work on that. Damn it. That's on my to-do list. No, actually, I remember I was talking to you about that. I don't remember what I had for breakfast. You wouldn't remember these things a year out.
It was to help kids, go to college and ease that burden of money, and also honor a lot of people that have worked very hard, not just in the sports world, but as you saw, we have a union winner. We have business person. People who have really had major impact in the community, in business, in the union world, labor world. And then of course,
we are Italians. We got to recognize.
We got to recognize all that. Yeah. And then again for the Hall of Fame. Now, the Hall of Fame this year was Tommy Yankello, the sports guy. Excuse me. Every time I come here, I have to
I'm
clear my
telling
damn
you,
throat.
Joe's probably chuckling right
Yeah.
now.
Hey, Joe. But anyway, we've had, through the years, Mario Andretti, Vinny Pazienza, Bruno Sammartino, Franco Harris, Chip Ganassi, Boom Boom Mancini. I can go on and on. And then
And I need to say thank you. You introduced me to my childhood idol,
Yeah,
Ray
he's a
Boom Boom
great
Mancini.
guy. Yeah,
You know what? I don't say this like in a shocked way, but I was really surprised how nice he is.
Oh, I
I never heard a bad thing about the guy.
No,
but when I actually met him, I'm like, wow, this guy really is nice.
He's a great guy. And I
felt odd asking for a photo, by the way. I wanted to take a photo with him. I just felt
Did you get one?
No, I felt
you
so
should have.
awkward, though.
Oh,
It's
he's great
The
with
problem is, I always wonder, and you know these guys, I don't know what they say, like, man, I wish people, like, I'm just trying to eat my dinner.
Yeah,
and you're
yeah,
like, I don't want to bother these guys. But
no, he's a good guy.
you owe me to get him in the studio, please.
We're gonna have him on. Yeah, we'll
please.
have him on.
And
And he's very good in the business end of things.
Yeah.
I told you, I've been in a lot of business meetings with a lot of people. He's like one of the most prepared people I've ever been around.
Yeah, he's not punch drunk. He's
Oh,
very
no,
sharp,
no,
nice
no,
guy,
no.
good guy. I
But,
liked him a lot.
A lot of great people have been honored. John Calipari was a coach. Yeah, what's crazy is whenever I see that program and I see my name with people like that, it's like, because I still look at myself as that
Right.
kid from Swickley, but it's nice to have been honored.
Well, you'll be in there. You'll be in there. I'll tell you why you've been in. Well, no, look. Ultimately, a lot of these awards come down to, there are people that do it as a job, and there are people that do it for passion, and it just happens to be their job. And I say this sincerely. I think you do it as a passion because one thing I've noticed about you is you always go back to your family. Like they have instilled something in you clearly, something good at a very young age, and you have taken that good thing and you've lived it. And that passion isn't just, quote, sports. Mm-hmm. It's the passion of something, and yours just happens to be sports. But I just get the sense that it's people like you that end up in places like that because you give your life to it.
I appreciate that. Well, for me, like I always said, if you ever see a turtle on top of a fence post, he didn't get there alone. And it's
really? I've never heard that one before,
yeah.
Claudio.
And I always give my parents.
God bless you. You do. I love the turtle in me.
You used it, I think, somewhere along the line. But my parents, and now my wife and daughter, but I've been fortunate enough to win a few awards, but I don't go up there and say, well, I remember when I did this, I did that. I just thank those who have been a part of everything.
But nobody can make it on their own.
No.
I mean, even the best athletes in the world had a trainer, had somebody. Now, you have to have that drive, and I think no one can give you, quote, drive. There are people like me. I'll be honest. I didn't grow up with anybody going, man, you can do it. Go get him. I didn't have that at all. That was something I picked up later in life where I was like, you know what? If I'm going to get this done, I got to do it myself. And so you just kind of learn to just, no excuses. I will say this, though. That was something I did learn when I got my commission. When I was in the Air Force. And I remember that was one of the first things they absolutely did teach us was your answer to anything was no excuse. There's no excuse. Even if it's your fault, there's no excuse. Hey, I'm driving drunk and I crashed into a telephone pole. No excuse. It's my fault. Or I'm just driving down the road and a rock falls from the sky. No excuse. It's my fault. And I think that drive, people can encourage it and feed it, but you've got to have it. But outside of that, nobody can teach you. Like I know, let's talk about, I see the shirt. You work with a lot of athletes. Yes, Reilsono baseball. But you do. You work with a lot of young athletes. You teach them, but they have to come to you and want to learn. Yeah. And I think that's what you bring. Kind of talking about that. You've got a lot of things going on right now. What do you think? Putting aside the fact that some of this is, hey, I got to do my job. There's a passion here. What's motivating you? Like, what are the things now that you're going, man? That's just something I want to keep doing.
As far as just job work
and life, yeah.
Oh. Well, I mean, obviously, I've been in baseball now for 42 years, and the coaching and the scouting. I'm still at CMU, finishing up my 20th year there. 24 years in professional baseball. You don't want to do that. I love doing shows. I'm trying to do more speaking. Everybody's a speaker, so that's a hard.
Well, you're polished though.
Yeah, but I want to do more speaking to high schools, especially. I'll do businesses as well. I'll speak at a morgue if they pay me, But I mean, I want to have
an audience of one, guaranteed.
Which is fine. But if the check clears. But I really want to have impact on people, and with my story and how I got from point A to point B and in between. So all those things. I'm working on a Sean Stellato who's going to be a guest. He's been a guest on our show. He's the NFL agent.
Let's get him back, though.
Yeah,
let's definitely get him back.
They're doing a day in the life of an agent, and they're following him. And it's going to be on the NESN network, which is also here in Pittsburgh.
New England, New England Sports
right,
Network.
But they have the channel here in Pittsburgh.
Yep.
So I'm working on that with him. And then still coaching, scouting, still with the landscape business, doing a lot of camps this year, a lot of lessons this year, which I've always done, but more so this year. Working on an entrepreneurial program, chapters on my show that I'd like to expand that.
Wait, we got to do it. That's ClaudioReilsono.com, ClaudioReilsono.com.
Even if you spell it wrong, somehow you get it. But,
there's only one.
There's only one. But like we had Chris Corciani on the show, and one of the quotes he had was, "What sets your business apart from someone else?" So that's one of my chapters. Fran Tarkenton, "Wake Up with a Sense of Desperation." That's one of my chapters. So being a professional, that's one of my chapters. Some of them are 20 minutes long, some are 10 minutes long. But it's something that I would like to do more of, the entrepreneurial part of it. So I'm doing that. What else am I doing? All those things. So I'm always
so not much.
No. But you know what, though? I always want to keep accomplishing things. Right. I always want. Well, obviously, you have to make a buck. But I enjoy doing all these things. I could never just do one thing. I always like to have different funnels of income because you don't know what's going to happen with this one.
You know what? I'll tell you what, you taught me that, for real. I've actually used that phrase, funnels of income, to other people, and I say, this goes away, at least you have this. Yeah. That's been huge because I think a lot of people they put too much reliance on a job. And I'm not saying, you need to go out and get 3 or 4 jobs, but, worst case scenario, what is your plan B? And I think a lot of people don't have a plan B because they just assume plan A is never going to stop. And one kind of funny financial thing is, a long time ago I learned, 3 months of bills covered in your savings account. At least 3 months.
Some people say a year to 2 or 3.
Most Americans don't have that.
No.
Americans don't even have 1 month. And there's that paycheck to paycheck. Something happens and you're done.
Well, we were talking about it before the show. It's important to me to provide for my family. I don't need anything. I don't want to go anywhere. I always say I want to keep the front door, fix the front door, and keep the wolf away from the front door. That's it. And I enjoy my life very much as long as my family's involved and doing things like this. And
do you ever see yourself retiring?
No, never.
I like your attitude. I'm the same way. I'll be doing something. I might not be working as much, but I'll be doing something.
Now, there might be some things I don't want to do.
Right.
But I'm also, as Greg Norman once said, I want to prepare for my life when I'm no longer #1 golfer in the world. I want to prepare my life when either baseball isn't here or the landscaping or something, and there's some things I would like to do. If you ask me what I would like to do, and I have that 7-year number, and I'm 60 now, I'd like to do more speaking I've been lucky with the sponsorship for the shows, but even more. And,
we all want more sponsorships.
Always want more sponsorships.
If you're interested in sponsoring the show, that's questions at ItalianImpactWeekly.com. That's questions at ItalianImpactWeekly.com.
Well, now when we had Mario Andretti on, now he obviously did great in his race car career, obviously. But as he said, it was when he retired at age 54, he made appearances, commercials, stuff like that. But the thing that took him to another level was what? The petroleum business.
That's right.
And then he sold it last March, and he just went through the roof. But so again, to be honest, I'll tell you something that I haven't said before on the air. 2 things I'm working on. I call it the Stellato Run. Sean Stellato was on Monday Night Football. He had the dress, the look, and the whole 9 yards. From there, he got attention, then he got opportunity, then he made money. So I joke with him. I call that the Stellato Run. And then the other thing I call is the Andretti Run, which is he was asked to get involved in this petroleum business. So I'm, if you want to get struck by lightning, you have to stand in the rain. So I'm standing in the rain. Right?
I like that.
Yes, I want to do more shows, more speaking, but I would like, and sometimes this comes close, but it didn't work. I would like to get picked up by a company to say, hey, we want you to do this, whatever it is, speaking, consulting, something like that. So I know hope isn't a strategy, but I am working towards these things.
Yeah, but you know what? That's the key, though. You should hope. We should all hope, but at the end of the day, we don't get seen unless we're out. Like you said, we're not standing in the rain. You're not going to get struck by lightning. And I believe in that, and that's why I like to keep my fingers in a lot of pots. Now, I will say this, and I don't know if you fall into this. I'm going to ask you this question. I find myself fatigued at times because maybe I'm doing too much. I know you used to love, one of the things you'll just say is you can always do more. I don't know if I agree with that. I think there's a point where it's like, all right, I'm tapped out. Yeah. Do you ever hit that wall?
Oh, yeah. I've hit the wall numerous times. And then I say to myself, I've told my wife, Linda, how many times, this is the last thing I'm going to do.
I say the same thing.
And then the phone rings, and you say, you know what?
Sure, I can do that.
Yeah, and now, you're right. Now, you don't want to get watered down. But the one thing, though, one of the most asked questions that I'm asked is, how do you do everything you do? Now, one thing I noticed about you is you don't rush, but you're quick. Bump, bump, do this, do that, do that. And you move. You don't lolly, you don't drag your feet.
Get it done.
I noticed about you. You get it done. And again, audience, forgive me, I quote a lot of people that I study. Greg Norman used to say, compartmentalize. So when I'm here with you, I'm doing the show. Focus. When I'm coaching, but also there's this one guy I know, he will spend all day long, and I'm talking about 6-7 hours on something that really only takes, to be honest with you, 20 minutes.
Right.
And then a lot of people I know,
we call that paralysis by analysis.
That's right. And I know another guy, I'll tell you more about it later, but just always late. Why? Joking around, screwing around. Do your work. My mom used to tell me, do your work, then go play.
Right.
One time, I'll never forget, this was in 2001 or 2, I had a big scouting thing that I was doing. I was working on at home. I was on a computer. It started to rain. And I love walking in the rain. So I said, you know what? I'm going to go for a walk. I went outside, made a right at my hedges, and I'd say 6 steps. And I said, my mom used to say, get your work done first, then go play, because this way you have a clear head. I turned around, got my work done, and I went and played. I went for a walk. But what I'm trying to say is, not everything takes 20 hours.
Right.
Not everything takes an hour. I know what I have to do, and if it takes a little more time, I do it. But again, you don't have to waste time. And a lot of people, they waste time, and I don't.
My fear is because I'm doing a lot, and I'm doing a lot. I mean, I'm teaching in multiple schools. I'm doing the documentary. I'm doing the shows. I consult part-time. Oh, by the way, I have a full-time job, and I'm the honorary consul of Pittsburgh, and I'm doing 2 days a week downtown for that. Oh, mamma mia.
And let me stop you. And you're doing all of them well. It isn't like you're doing them, half.
It's funny because I was about to say that, but I said sometimes I feel like, am I doing it well? Because I feel like it's like sometimes, I'll give you a good example. Yesterday, I was working in the consulate office, and what I do is I for my listeners, remember, I don't get paid for that. It's a volunteer position. So I give 2 days a week, Mondays and Fridays. Why do I do it? Because I'm nuts, obviously. But I do it to help people because there are some really people I've met, some wonderful people, and I've helped them. And you feel good about it. That's my payment. And I'm good with that. To see people walk away with a smile and say thank you, that means a lot to me. But anyways, I'm downtown yesterday, and I think I got home by about 3. But it was call after call, meeting. People were constantly on call. I was so tired, mentally fatigued. But I was like, I got to go grade papers because now I teach at Virginia Tech in the summer and online. Yeah. Because,
wow.
Well, that's the money that I use then to pay for the film. So for people that are listening, how do you fund your stuff? Yeah. I fund it with work. Yeah. Manna does not fall from the sky. God rewards hard work. You just got to be careful to not be foolish and take your time away from the Lord. But, hard work pays off. So I come home now I got to grade my Virginia Tech stuff. And then I'm like, I got to grade my RMU stuff because I'm also teaching a class RMU in the summertime. By the time I'm done, I am just gassed. And I just don't have anything left. And then that's the point where you go, am I doing too much? And I guess that's why I don't know if how often does that happen to you or what? It happens to me. Sometimes it happens more often than I care to admit.
But you know what though? Let me say this. And I just got a text from my daughter. We do every year. We do around this time of year, we do it in the winter and we do it in the summer, where we go to Starbucks and we walk around, we hit all the stores. And I was going to do some work after this, okay, which I already did some things. I'll show you my checklist of things I have to do. But you know what? I'm going to spend some time with my daughter as well. And what I was going to do today, I'll do tomorrow. Now, to your point, you can do more. Because you can't, and you don't waste time either. Now, the one thing too, forgive me for jumping around, you said you don't get paid for this, you don't get paid for that. But by you being a consultant, by you being this, by you being that, there's a lot of people who do shows. A lot of people.
Right.
Let me stop there. Let me start over again. There's a lot of people who coach college baseball. How many coach college and scout professionally? How many coach college, scout professionally, and own a few businesses? How many do that and speak? How many do that and, I'm involved in the golf business. My point is, like when I speak, they don't say, or you. They'll say, there's Steve. He works at this particular school. No, he does a show, had a documentary. You put more flowers in the garden to separate yourself from others.
That's right. So
you might not get paid directly, okay, for this, but it looks good. Oh, you know what I'm trying to say?
Right.
And so I do, 5, 6 shows. I get paid for 3 of them, I think. But the other people, they don't have to know that I'm not good. But it looks good. Right. It looks, for the lack of a better term, a little shine on you, a little sexy. It makes you stand out. So, but I think you and I've been there where the phones weren't ringing. And you worry. And so I said, I'm never going to complain again. And so it's good that you're wanted. And the other thing, too, is, we're in our 60s, and that's good that we're still.
I'm in my 50s.
Oh, really? I thought you were.
No. Oh, my God. Not yet, buddy.
Oh, I'm older than you?
Yes, you are, Claudio.
Okay. Well, but still, but we're wanted.
But I'm still in my 50s. But notice I said in my 50s. I refuse to say what number.
Oh, that's all right. I'll be 61 in October. But it's good because, a lot of people are forgotten.
Right.
And I want to keep being relevant. I want to keep my name out there. And I'm just adding more. And you know what? Again, I just want to accomplish as much. Gene Simmons from KISS one time said, you're born, you start to grow, you find something that you want to do, a passion, a dream, you set it, you go after it, you accomplish it, you make some money, try to have impact, and you die. But I just want to keep at it. And or like Jim Valvano once said, I want my dance card full. Because some people, I don't know how they do it. I mean, but again, to each their own.
Right.
Some people like squid. Some people don't. I don't. But I mean, some people like to do what you and I do. Some people don't. I know some people who do not have that entrepreneurial switch in them, which is fine. They want that. They want to be told what to. And there's nothing wrong with that. They want the 9 to 5, which is terrific. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But again,
I just wonder if they're really fully living, though.
But maybe for them they are.
Right. Yeah. I feel like we all do have a gift. I mean, the good book says we're all given a gift, and I think we have to. I think the sooner we find out what our gift is and live taking advantage of that gift, I think then you feel more fulfilled in life.
But again, some people may feel fulfilled
with a 9 to 5
just doing that, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. But for you and I, we're like
doers.
to go after it. Yeah.
Man, we're doers.
And that's just how it is.
Claudio,
that's how we're wired, I should say.
You got to come. You're not.
We done already?
You're coming. Yeah, man.
Wow.
I know. That's why I'm like, holy cow.
That was quick.
We can talk some more, buddy.
Oh, you're the boss. You're the boss.
But no, listen. First of all, I do want to thank you for coming in. I do appreciate that, and you're going to come back because we got a couple. We're still going to get some of the guests. You and I have been promising some guests, and I'm calling in the friend favor for at least Ray, and then
Sean Stellato.
We want to show Sean Stellato. And
we've had some nice names. We had Vince Ferragamo.
Yeah.
We had Mario Andretti.
We've had some great guests on the show.
I'm trying to think. Jerry Cooney.
The funny thing is, I'll throw something at you though, and I don't say this to be mean. I talk to some people. I say, we had Mario Andretti, and of course, it's all about how old are they. Who? Jeez, Mario Andretti. Who? Ugh. So, these kids, it's frustrated because I think it's our generation. We know who they are.
But when we were that age, we knew who the older guys were.
Right.
Me and my friends talk about it all the time. When I was 10, 12, I knew who Bronco Nagurski was. I knew who Bobby Lane was. I knew who, Bob Cousy was.
I know the names, but I'm telling you, I couldn't remember specifics. But you know what? But to your point, at least I know the names. The funny thing is I tell you what. Let me ask you. I tell you what. We're not done yet. I'm going to ask you a good question. And this is interesting because those names. I'm not saying that there was a loyalty to the athlete back then that I think because over the last few decades the way sports in general has completely commercialized. These guys always wanted to get paid. Even 80 years ago, they wanted to get paid. I don't blame. We don't want to act like athletes never wanted to get paid. They were just getting the crap beat out of them because they just wanted to do the right thing. No, that was a job and they wanted to get paid. They just didn't get paid then what they got paid. Especially in the last few decades, and especially more recently with the advent of gambling, because gambling is really pouring the money in. And then now you've got the college athletes that can now make money off their name. So, but let me ask you a question. Do you think the days of the passionate fan base, to hold an athlete in esteem like they would have done 50, 60 years ago, do you think those days are gone?
Yeah. And it's not necessarily the fans' fault. Okay. There has to be a give and take. You have to like the player for more than just the uniform.
Right. Because they're not going to be there very long. Right.
That's
especially if they're a decent Pirates.
Yeah. Well, and this is no offense to anybody, so I don't mean to knock anybody, but there's some athletes, and you can just listen and watch. But there's no, like I just quoted some play. I quoted Fran Tarkenton. I quoted, you quoted Marino. And these guys gave you more than just,
right.
It's cool. You guys want to tell us about that.
I just want to get paid.
Well,
I just want to get paid. I'm going to sit out. Yeah, you're right.
They don't say that, but everything's cool.
Yeah.
Give me more. Like when you said, Claudio, how you doing? Good. Okay.
Right.
Can
they have
you
nothing
give me
more.
A little bit more.
Right.
Okay. So you don't know who these people are. Me personally, the reason why I've liked X amount of athletes, yes, I'm in the sports world, but they had to bring more to it than just how good throwing a ball, hitting a ball, catching a ball. How were they with their parents? Mancini, obviously I was attracted to him because he was Italian, but then the other thing that got me was what? He wanted to win the title for his dad. This is back when I started hearing him in the 70s, right? And then, I was attracted to that because I wanted to do things for my parents. And so when I hear an athlete, there has to be an attraction. There are certain Italian coaches or players that I wasn't attracted to because there wasn't a connection. Yeah, does that make sense?
Right.
Or you didn't find yourself being like them, which is nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying, different tastes. But sports is different now. And people say, well, the money. Yeah, well, back when our dads maybe were making 20-some thousand a year, there were some athletes making 150. And now, it's not like today where you're making, some basketball player, I think it was like $62 million a year. And somebody's making $80,000. The gap is much wider.
Look at what Cleveland was with Deshaun Watson. They guaranteed him like $200 million. I mean, he gets paid. No matter what he paid or not.
Good for him.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I don't blame him.
No.
I blame the stupid organization. Why would you guarantee that money for someone that had the problems that he had? And I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but to your point, now I'm a fan. How can I connect to that guy? How can I root for that guy? How can I in any way want to follow or emulate that guy, other than the fact that maybe I'm just completely about the money? Like, oh, he's getting paid. Like, okay.
I remember, I want to say 81, 82. I'm not real sure. I can tell you where I was in Swickley when the news was Magic Johnson signed something like a 13-year, $13 million contract. Everybody said, what? Nobody got mad. You know why? Magic was good. They won. He worked his tail off, and he was a good guy. Nobody cared. Larry Bird, Michael Jordan. Did you hear anybody ever saying that those three guys were overpaid? Or Tom Brady?
Right.
But
it's funny you say that. Nobody complained. That's
nobody
right.
Complained about that. But you didn't mention Tom Brady. You just mentioned Deshaun Watson. Okay, because he didn't do anything.
Exactly.
But and again, I don't.
Way to go! I'm happy for Cleveland to screw the pooch on that one.
I don't.
Sorry, my Cleveland listeners.
It's front offices are bad.
Exactly.
That's another story. But again,
and most organizations, not just even Pittsburgh. I'm still not impressed with Pittsburgh's front office anymore.
But again, the athletes, when we grew up, They told you their story. They told you who they were.
Oh, like you mentioned Rocky Blyer before.
Yeah, and Rocky Blyer to this day is great with it. You mentioned Mancini. One time we were at a casino opening in Ohio, and his wife Tina said, do you have to go home anytime soon? I said, not really. She said, this is going to take an hour to get from one end of the casino to the other. And I laughed. It took over an hour. Why? Ray, hey, sign it. Yeah, I remember you. I told you just one time, Namath. I went to a book signing. Long story short, they said all he can do is sign his name. That's it. That's it. Mr. Namath, he grabbed the mic. He said, Joe. He said, all you can do is you're going to give it to me. We're going to present it to Joe. Joe's going to present, and that's it. No pictures, no handshaking, because there's a ton of people here. We have to get going. The first person, I saw it. I heard it. The first person said, Mr. Namath, it's such an honor to meet you. He says, my name's Joe, and thank you for coming. Then he looks at me. He had a Monaca sweatshirt on. Monaca. I remember back in 1960, we had a game against him. He was unbelievably great with everyone. And he took his time. Right. And I won't go into the story of what he was with me, but it was a very special story that day with me and him. And I told him, I said, I'm sure you heard of this is in 2007, so what was I don't know, 40-something, whatever. I said, you've heard of the term floating out of the room? You made me float out of here. And he said, oh, I appreciate that. He was signing books. Somebody came down from an escalator. Joe, thank you for the memories. He stopped signing. He says, no, thank you. And this is Joe Namath.
Right.
I don't see them doing that. Now, the quarterback, Josh Allen from Buffalo, that kid is special. Not just as a player, but as a person. What does it take to just scribble in that? He takes time with people, takes a picture. Nice kid. And I'm rooting for him because of that.
Well, I'd like to see him actually win a Super Bowl. I mean, what was it? It wasn't Jim Kelly, was it?
Yeah.
You feel like, again, another great quarterback and just couldn't get over that last hurdle. It was like every time they got there, it was like they're playing the team that was destined. It was like, damn it, not this year. Yeah,
they went 4 years in a row.
Right. I mean, just couldn't get over the hurdle.
Yeah. Their coach, by the way, is 100 years old, Marv Levy. Their head coach.
Still around?
He's 100. Yeah.
Wait, now?
He's like a couple weeks ago, he turned 100, I believe. Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
You're kidding.
No, he's still doing pretty good. Dick Vermeil, was he on our? He was on my show. He was like 86, 87, still sharp as a tack. You mentioned Mario Andretti. He's still on the board of F1.
Oh yeah, that's the other thing. You know what? I'm going to say something crazy. I think because I've gone into a lot of senior homes and to visit people, and you walk by people and they're like just out of it, and I wonder, if part of that isn't because you just essentially stop living.
Exactly.
I mean, I know that there are some
like
genetics.
What's that group called? The Village People here.
Oh, the people walking by. We're in the studio, and there's some maintenance folks going by, and
No, you're exactly right. When you stop, you're. There was a guy who said that every day he comes up with a list of solutions to problems. He trains his memory muscle because when you don't, it atrophies. Is that the proper term?
Yeah.
It's same with, you as a whole. If you stop,
then what?
Like, for example, my wife, obviously she has time off in the summer from teaching. Boy, when that time comes again, you got to really buck up because the momentum's gone.
That's right.
So you keep going, and because now it's good to recharge your batteries, no doubt.
What's it like to recharge your batteries? Because I still haven't taken a vacation. I went to Italy to film. Let me tell you something.
That wasn't...
Not at all.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I had a few hours. In fact, there was one day. We actually ended up filming in that day. We go out to this guy's house to have a nice dinner because he was alive during the war. He's one of the people that will be in this film.
Yeah.
And I'm interviewing him. But we had the dinner. It was an old, like a homemade sit outside. And I remember just going, finally. Because the entire week was just go, 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 go. You can go to beautiful areas and not necessarily rest.
Well, I'll say this, and there's another guy, Ron Vrana, who I'm involved in the golf business with. We'll have him on the show. He's Italian.
Let's do it.
Good guy. And we've done things for years.
Welcome back, Claudio. Hell yeah.
But he always said, he told me.
I'm excited about that.
Well, I'm too.
I want you to come back.
Thank you. We were going to Erie for the day, me and my wife and my dog. We were going to Niagara Falls and Erie. He said, I'm going to call you. If you answer, I'm going to be mad. I said, Ron, you know I'm always going to answer. And he called me and he got mad because to me, the phone's always on.
For certain people, absolutely.
And also,
Absolutely.
and I'll say this, and I don't mean this to come off, whatever it comes off as, when we're on vacation, and I can't go too long. To be honest with you,
You get itchy.
I get itchy. 3 days, like my uncle in Italy, he'll say, when are you coming? I said, well, we'll be there. I said, but I can't. He wants me to stay for a month. He says, how long are you staying? I don't know, 3 days? 3 days? Because everything for me is 3 days.
I get the same thing. I'm like, I will
Max.
be there for a week. Like, just a week? Like,
I can't.
And I'm not even going to be resting that week.
Yeah. So we, whenever we go somewhere, let's just say, Erie. Okay, we're just sitting there on the beach, and I'm thinking, man, Erie's a great spot. I love it.
It is.
It's
underappreciated in the
it is.
summertime.
But I'm saying, there's a lot of businesses here. I'd like to do some. So my mind's always going. It never shuts off.
Yep.
And that's just the way I am. Now, even at night, like I read a ton, but the only thing that takes my mind off it a little bit is every night before I go to bed, I watch old wrestling interviews, old wrestling matches. And my wife gets that, this, I'll break your neck next time. And she says, what the hell? But it takes my mind. Now, I watch the stuff from the 70s and 80s.
I tell you what, it's funny you say that. You know what I watch at night to relax me? Yes, I still watch Hogan's Heroes.
Yeah.
And I watch old war movies, like from the 50s and 60s.
Whatever gets your mind off of things.
It just relaxes me. It could be the most violent movie in the world. I remember I was watching the series The Pacific. Pretty violent. It's about the Marines obviously fighting in the Pacific during World War II. It's pretty violent, and I'm like falling asleep to it because for some reason, I don't know. Oh, massive war scenes, people getting killed. I think I'm gonna go sleep now.
Yeah. Well, I used to read.
That's how chaotic the day is. You're watching a battle,
That makes it easier,
I'm gonna
yeah.
go to sleep.
Well, I like to read, but then if I read a business book or an investment book or financial book, then it gets you all wound up for the next month. So I said, you know what, that's not good. Let me just watch wrestling tapes or what.
I totally
what do they call
understand
it?
that.
YouTube and all that kind of stuff.
I absolutely totally get that, and I do the same thing to relax me.
Now, Sunday we were going to go somewhere, but we couldn't. So we just went to the pool. Just all three of us just stayed in the corner of a pool and just talked. And so my batteries were charged a little bit. When I think of that, I think of Fran Tarkenton went to Hawaii for a week, and he came back. He was at the airport. He said, I was recharged, tanned, and ready to go. He's a very serial entrepreneur. He saw somebody walking by with a white envelope. This is in the early 80s. What was in the white envelope? A ticket. So he looked around. He says, everybody here has money. Everybody here is holding that ticket or that envelope. Something that he calls it opportunity sensory perception, OSP. He said he went to the office the next morning with dollar signs in his head, advertising on those tickets. So he found a printer. He found somebody who can get the envelopes. Him and another guy went out and hustled for advertising. He made millions on it, and he sold the business. Now, eventually that business was outdated, but not before he left. Right. He made a nice chunk of change. So you never know.
Right.
You never know what.
And even if it's a quick hit, you got to strike. They don't strike while the iron's hot.
Whatever. But
nobody's going to go buy a pet rock anymore. But I'll tell you what, there was a moment where people thought a pet rock is a great. I tell you what, now having a dog back at home because my daughter's back home and my son's back home and they've got their dog with them. Yeah, I think I'd rather have a pet rock. Doesn't crap in my yard.
But you never know when something's going to pop up. Right. Or again, when you and I first met, who thought it would lead to this? Right. Or the first time you met your wife, or the first time I met wine. You don't know what's going to happen.
That's right.
Or the first time I met Sean Stellato in Chicago at the Italian Hall of Fame. We met, and now here we may make some money together. You just don't know. Mm-hmm. So again, opportunity, sensory perception. You're always on the lookout, and that's the way it is. And you know what? It makes life exciting. It makes it fun instead of just.
Right.
And again, Joan Rivers' manager is the one. I think his name is Larry Thompson. He said, if you want to get struck by lightning, you have to stand in the rain. But there was a great documentary on her, and she showed her calendar. This is a great month. No, this is a bad month. It was pretty much empty. She flipped it. This is a great month, packed. And that's just, that's kind of the way I go about it. Like I said, I have a checklist here, and I'll show you. I have an appointment book.
He's frantically reaching through his pockets, and there it is.
I have a.
Oh, you got old school.
Book,
nice.
I have about 18 things.
Nice.
I usually get around.
That's what this is. I have an electronic version of that now.
Well,
my kid bought me this. This is great because I can't remember all this.
Well, I have an appointment book at home on my desk, and I'll write some things on my phone and this. So I'm never late.
That's fantastic.
But it's good to be wanted because again, I remember when the phones weren't ringing, and I remember one time I was at a furniture store, and I got a phone call when I first got my phone. I said, "Man, like your first customer."
Right.
And so I'm just trying to keep it going because I don't take for granted. I always
joke.
That's
right.
There's another good-looking Italian kid out there who wants my position, and I ain't giving it up.
That's right. A kind of a final thought, but we are easily forgotten.
Oh yeah.
So you have
2001. I was going to the Major League Baseball Winter Meetings in Boston. Who do I see walking down the airport? Bo Jackson. Nobody knew who the hell he was. I said, "Are you kidding me?" Nobody was, pounding him for autographs, which people do forget you. Like you just said a little bit ago, you can't get any bigger than Mario Andretti. He is racing.
That's right.
Or Dan Marino,
right.
Arguably the greatest quarterback of all time. I'll tell my players, Dan Marino was actually born and raised 2 blocks from here. Who? Dan Marino.
Went to high school right over there.
Yeah, exactly. Are you being serious?
No, the sad part is they are, because you know what, and you know what, I don't.
And in a day and age when you and I had to go to the index cards, encyclopedia.
You make a good point there, because now with technology, there's no excuse. No. Everything's at your fingertips.
Or these football games, the Madden and all. They have the old time. You think they would know, but they don't.
No, Claudio. Thanks for coming back, man. But we're going to be back doing this sooner rather than later. So let me know. We got a couple of guests lined up that we're gonna interview, and I'm actually really excited about that. But folks, once again, to my listeners all over the world, this show is making it, buddy, and you and I can take credit for that together, because you and I met a few years back on a different show that I was doing. Yeah. Like you said, you never know what leads to what. It was just this kind of, I don't want to call it a comedy of errors, but just all these weird things happen. And the next thing you know, we're doing a show and we did it for over a year. Yep. Now you're back. He's not back full time. He's busy, but he's going to be back more often, at least more often. And, it's wonderful. We'll see what happens.
And I always appreciate you. And, the title of my book, Lead from the Heart Up, Not the Neck Up. You always speak from the heart up, and I appreciate that.
I appreciate you. And Claudio and I are actually cut from the same cloth. Believe it or not, we are. I believe that. I honestly believe that. Yeah. And I appreciate you, brother. Thank you. Folks, again, from all over the world, grazie mille, for I was going to say for tuning in Italian, but I keep forgetting. I tell you what, that's the other thing. When I go to the consulate and I got to speak Italian, English, by the end of the day, my head's killing me, and then I'm blasting between both languages, and I'm getting them both wrong at that point. So I want to thank my listeners all over the world, especially the folks that tune in on a regular basis. And for whatever reason, to my listeners, and I, Claudia, haven't figured this out, but there's a bunch of people in Singapore that are tuning in, and people from Brazil and Australia. But I don't care where you're from. I appreciate you tuning in. Have a wonderful and blessed week, and we will see you in about a week. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.